Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time to gather in the music room and have a live stream. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all well. And yes, the Scots are great people. And I'm sure will be great at some point in the future. Let us hope it's not too far in the future, Anglo. And I'm sure that we haven't entirely lost our warrior spirit. I can't imagine that. Not so long as we've got bad weather and whiskey. I'm sure that'll keep our warrior spirit going. Anyway, I hope you're doing all right, sir. It's Friday again. The weeks just fly by. Fly by. Interesting last night listening to conversations about slaves and All that nonsense. I always thought myself that this returning to history and imposing modern values onto it was complete and utterly futile and wasteful. Bannockburn, yeah, there's a place. The Scots taught the English a lesson. Good evening, Toffee. Hope you're all right. For me, I I see the whole thing as a pretty useless coat hanger for people to hang up what they might perceive to be the failures of their own life and have this past history used as a reason for failure or what they perceive to be a failure in their own life. You know, my life's only shitty because, at some point in the past, uh, my relatives were slaves, that kind of thing. That's what I see. And if there's any truth to that idea, then I'm sure you would agree it's pretty pathetic if that's what goes through their mind. It really is. It's pretty pathetic. And it's very, very limited, this view of history. Because one of the first things that you learn about history is you can't slice it up. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Toffee, what's this? It's Ladies' Days. Ladies' Day. Good God, what's this? In Liverpool at the Aintree racecourse this weekend. So I've been raking it in with my taxi business. Oh, good for you, mate. Excellent. Good for you. Quite the entrepreneur. Good evening, Robert. Hope you're doing all right. Oh, there's DJ. Well, absolutely, DJ. This is the point I'm making. If you're one of the difficulties about I have always found about trying to understand what happened in history, no matter where you look at, is this very problem. You try to understand the Spanish Civil War, you can't understand that without understanding the bit that came before it. Likewise, on and on and on. And that's when you realize that history itself is a continuous flow. And to try and section it is at best fraught with complications and errors, leads to error. But this is done, of course, for what I would regard as simple minded, so that they can, if they wish, blame all their present day disgruntlements onto it. DJ, if every instance of slavery was brought into the conversation, then it would devalue the victim mentality that they are intent on keeping alive with the transatlantic trade. But of course, hello, that's absolutely correct, DJ. Good evening, Julia. I hope you're all right. But hello. Very rare I catch a stream. Well, that's true. And of course, if you think about it, to be balanced about it, DJ, I was rarely on last year. I was too ill to be on last year, really. So I didn't do a lot last year. Uh, so you never really, nobody got an opportunity to be on here last year. Well, not much of one. Yeah, but get back to this. I mean, what, I don't see what the attraction is in being uh, a victim. I mean, I find it hard enough to accept that this is the way my daughter goes on. No, I'm talking about my biological daughter now. She spent her whole life being a victim. And when she was a child, she was a victim. And I've tried to show her that once you become an adult, you can't use that excuse anymore, because as an adult, you've got choices. I barely catch any of these streams, to be honest, says DJ. Yes, well, you've got other things in your life now. You've got that good lady of yours, and you've got that wee dog to look after, and you've got your mum. And, I can see from the videos that I've watched, you're you do a lot of hill walking, as they call it. Good evening, Repo. How are you? Well, I knew it was there. Oh, you're talking about the one that's going to get built here? Yeah, well, I heard about that. I can assure you, DJ, uh, I will not be letting that settle cozily into the area. I'm going to have something to say about that, and I'm going to do it publicly. I haven't made up my mind yet how I'm going to mount a campaign, but I will be doing something about it. I mean, I cannot for one instant imagine what Greenock had to do with the slave trade. It's not like Liverpool. Liverpool, I understood historically, was used by many ships, not just slave ships, but by many ships. They would dock in Liverpool, take on supplies and replenish and any repairs, blah blah blah. That was a good reason for them to be in Liverpool. But there weren't slave ships up here in the Clyde. It's too far off the beaten track for it. And even in Liverpool, I would argue, most of the dockers that would be working there would have really nothing to do with those ships. And the dockers who did have anything to do with those ships would be loading and well, they wouldn't be loading either. They would be loading supplies and unloading whatever needed unloading. Now, how that constitutes involvement, I don't know, but it seems to, in the minds of some people, play a part, an active part in the whole transport business. I don't quite see it that way, and I say that, folks, having worked on a dock, I know how it, well, in a modern sense, I knew how it worked. And that was without cranes. So it was all manual stuff. But the same back there in those days. To me, there's a lot of hooey and bullshit attached to this, even for Liverpool. And how long were the ships docked? They wouldn't have been docked there too long because the people who were transporting these poor buggers would know that they needed to get them to wherever they were going as fast as possible to make sure that few as possible died. I think so. Well, that's how I see it, Dorothy. And this is how I feel anytime I've had conversations with my daughter. I was going to spit there. I was going to swear there. It's embarrassing. I've got a miserable life, and it's all your fault. Actually, it's not. As I say, DJ, what is this got to do with Scotland? Up until very recently, and when I say very recently in history, you can make that claim, although it might be a couple of hundred years. Very recently, at the height of the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade, and I have this from my friend in Glasgow, who's a PhD in the subject of history, by the way. There was one black man in Scotland, one. Again, Toffee, I agree with you. I'll let no man on earth victimise me. Well, no, they'll have a fight on their hands if they try. I'm sure they will. And they'll need to fight with those dogs of yours as well. Bames are so cringe and pathetic. I mean, I thought it was quite natural. Maybe it's me again. Maybe I'm just too naive. I thought it was quite natural for people, men and women, to want to do the best for themselves that they can make. What, and that's very dependent on where your starting position is, not where your finishing position is, where your starting position is. And to be a victim surely means that you're allowing other people to take control of what happens in your life. That's just absolutely pathetic. That's Chief Moody. My gosh. Good evening, Chief Moody. Yeah, Scottish Globalist Party. Yeah. Better named, better named indeed. DJ saying, from my understanding, their claim is that Glasgow profited from slavery because a few were in the tobacco trade and had property in Glasgow. But certainly the city didn't profit like they claim. Now that's a distinction I would make, DJ. This is a nonsense. This is limited thinking. Yes, there was a tobacco trade in Glasgow, certainly. And I used to work for the Glasgow Tobacco Company on the docks, folks, on the docks down here in Greenock. Okay? Now, the point I'm going to make is the one that DJ's making. So that tobacco would be offloaded here in the days going by, as it was when I was there. And when was I there? Well, I was there in the 60s, 1960s, not the 1860s, the 1960s. But the point is well made. All that tobacco went to Glasgow. It went into the factories that turned that raw tobacco into cigarettes and pipe tobacco, etc., etc. Cigars as well, no doubt. But where did all that profit go? Well, it went into the pockets of the owners. Not the owners, not just of the factories, but of the product itself. And they would more likely or not be the same people. The people who worked in the factories certainly benefited from having a job in the factories, but they didn't make themselves wealthy from working up in Glasgow making cigarettes in a factory. Absolutely not. You only have to work at a factory to know that, and I've worked in many factories to know that. Not cigarette factories, I might add, but they're all the same. You get a wage, and that's it. The people who are creaming all the profit are one or two individuals who own it all. We generally call them capitalists. Sometimes we can name them and sometimes we can't. And this is, again, you're absolutely right, DJ, and this is where you're back to this sloppy thinking, where they're painting with a giant brush. And you really can't do that. If you're looking, if someone's looking for responsibility, let's call it responsibility, then you have to paint with a small brush. You have to look at the detail. Who owned the ships that came into Greenock and Glasgow laden with raw tobacco? Who owned the cargoes in the ships? Who owned or who owned the transport? In bygone days, that would be horse and carts. Who owned all that? Moving it from Greenock to Glasgow. And before they dug the channel in the Clyde, all the ships stopped here. They all stopped here because they couldn't get up to Glasgow. So for a while, all the ships offloaded their stuff here at Greenock or Port Glasgow. Then they had to be transported to Glasgow. Now, it might have been each part of that operation was owned by different people. But it's more likely that it was owned by one group of people or one person, the whole operation. And the profit that they keep talking about, these troublemakers, isn't going into the pockets of working class people because they're working in the factories just like they do today. Just like I did when I worked in the Glasgow Tobacco Company. I could show you where I worked, it's still there. No toilet facilities, no heating. You're working on the dock. The doors are opened. You're open to the elements all the time. And you're getting paid for unskilled work because that's what it's classified as. Now, I'm not complaining. Exactly, DJ. Anglo. That's a vision. Wouldn't surprise me to see the indigenous folk here start getting into dinghies to flee what's coming. Robert. Banana boats. Well, we had sugar here, of course. We had two sugar houses. We've still got one building, one storage building standing. But the reason it's standing is they're leaving it. This is the policy that they always adopt here, is they leave it and they don't do anything with it. Eventually, they'll get the fire chief to go along and condemn it, then they'll be able to knock it down like they have done everything else. That's what they normally do here. But yes, oh, there's Laura. Good evening, my dear. How are you? Sugar House employed a lot of people. In fact, from where I'm sitting now, uh, Walker Sugar site isn't far from the house here. A couple of minutes, and you're. I could take you to where it used to be. Obviously, it's long gone. The other one, Westburn, was at the other end of the town. If they hammer home the narrative that historically racism and slavery were like they claim, they can say those attitudes still exist today. That's why there's a lack of representation, etc. Well, that's a very good point, DJ. It's a very good point. Unfortunately, it's historically not true, as you well know. When the sugar and the tobacco came into the town before they dug the channel, and even after they dug the channel, it was local people who unloaded the ships and moved the raw materials. Well, in tobacco case, there were warehouses right on the dock, which is where I worked, so that they would get taken right into the dock. Yes, beg your pardon, straight into the warehouse where we would deal with it under the supervision of government officers from tax revenue, and it would all be very carefully catalogued and weighed for tax purposes. Sugar went straight from the dock onto flat wagons, which were then moved by Shire horses up to just down there. In fact, there's a wee bit of a remains of the stables for the Shire horses, which I could show people. And the other factory, Westburn, it was at the far end of the town, but it was exactly the same. The horses would uh, shift it up to the factory, but to begin, it's see. I don't know how you guys feel about all this. I really don't. But I just get weary of all this nonsense. I really do. I just get weary of it. Anglo, their contribution to the world is twerking and voodoo. Ah, well, that's true enough. Libtards are weird. It's folk. They hate their own folk. Yeah. Yeah, I was out today, my dear. I had to go and pay some bills at the bank. So, I was out walking today, but the old knackered lung here, murder, trying to get breath. The leg, mind you, the more I was out walking, the more I walked, the leg was fine. It wasn't the leg that bothered me, it was the lung. And I don't think that's going to ever get better. Good evening, Hasdak and Doberman. So I just can't be bothered with it. Well, do they, as I said before when I spoke about this, Tuesday, I think. My advice to any of you, if you get involved in this conversation outside our circles in the real world, don't, please do not forget to mention the most important part of all of this is that we bought their freedom. It was paid for by the British taxpayer. And I don't know if it was Toffee or somebody else. I think it was Toffee. It may have been Toffee who gave us the date of 2015. That debt was finally paid back. That's the important part for me. This freedom that they got came at a cost, and we paid the price. Oh gosh, it'd have been a rich man, Toffee. Yeah. The second city of the empire, Robert, you're correct. It was the second city of an empire with a huge part. Of course, it attracted transport and trade. What about a real shipyard and dock worker museum for the people who belong here? Robert, you're talking my language. You've no idea how long I've been getting on about that. A relative of mine works in the local museum, just the local museum's just down the road there, less than 5 minutes away from the house here. And he tells me that the amount of material that's in storage to do with the shipyards is absolutely colossal in the amount of it. And I don't know how many of you know this, but in a place like Greenock and Port Glasgow, where shipbuilding went on, it'll be the same in Glasgow, by the way. They'll have this in Glasgow. But each of the yards that built ships, they also built models of the ships that they built. Beautiful scaled models. And these models still exist. They're in beautiful wooden and glass cabinets. I've seen a few of them. Gorgeous things. Precision modelling. And they're lying about in the local people have never seen them because obviously when the ship's yards were working, these models were kept in the offices. So the only people that ever got to see them would be office workers or visitors to the shipyard. But the whole town is actually overflowing with material that should be in a museum and on display. And I've argued this for, oh, you've no idea how many years I've argued this, especially when these holiday makers started coming on the ship, on the cruise liners. There isn't a single thing here to show them the history of what went on. It's disgraceful. But I know the materials here to do it. I think part of the trouble is that people who get elected into the council seem to be rather short on imagination. Now, Liverpool will be the same, but they may have places. Toffee would be able to tell us, but there's certainly nothing here. And to me, it's criminal. But it takes willpower, desire to do something. There, as I said already, there is one storage warehouse left from the sugar factories. One left, still standing. And what should happen is it should be made safe to use. And it could be easily turned then into something of a museum. For all this material. Toffee, have you heard of Carmel Laird Shipbuilding? Yes, of course, on the Merseyside. Part of the Titanic was built there. I had an apprenticeship there briefly when I left school. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, we had one here as well. But in all my lifetime, it was closed because of the Titanic disaster, of course. But as I say, all these companies had models of the ships that they built. Beautiful things. '42's doing a call-in show, is he? Oh, I tried that once. Nobody phoned in. So I hope he does better than me. DJ, yeah, a boring weekend. Oh, there's Scott's Armour. Good evening. Never seen a Chinese bus driver I'm searching. I'm sending an email off tomorrow. Bigots. Ah, so anyway. So as I say, if you ever hear people socially talking about this subject and they speak as they normally do in ignorance, to me, the most important thing to point out to them is that the working class people of this country paid for their freedom throughout the empire, throughout the British Empire. And that's a fact, a historical fact. Wherever the British Empire had slaves, or people who belonged to the British Empire had slaves, they were brought out of slavery by our money. If anybody is due reimbursement, I would say it's the working class people of this country. That's what I would say. Well, I would say they owe us more than a big thank you, but yes, a thank you would be enough. But if we want to really press the point, I would say, and I'm sure the records still exist, they should be paying us back because these poor buggers were bought back at market value, whatever the hell that was. It's a terrible way to talk about human beings, but that's the way it was. They were bought at market value. Does it really matter, Anglo? I don't think we ended slavery out of compassion. I think there was a certain amount of that. I reckon it was done to undermine the USA primarily. Perhaps be an element to that, I'm sure. You got to also remember that it wouldn't have got started in the way that it did if the Pope at the time didn't come out and declare that these black people were without a soul. So they weren't quite human. And that eased the conscience of Christians who were involved in it all. And that's another factor. Yeah, he hasn't been here for a while, Streaky Bacon. He's on the missing list. Just across the Mersey from Liverpool, Birkenhead. Yeah, it's a famous one, that one, Toffee. Yep, absolutely. Definitely an insurance job. Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it, Anglo. No doubt about it. Tate Lyle. Yeah, Tate Lyle. But they came, that came after Walker and Westburn. Walker and Westburn were two separate companies. They also had they also had a plant, well, two plants in the town. One that made uh, tins for storage of treacle and syrup, which they made here. And the factories were side by side down. It doesn't matter to you, but I'm pointing this way, down that way towards the front of the town. Two factories there. Well, three actually, um, specially built, and that's what they made in there. So the production was spread from the back end of the town, what we call up at the high end, and that was Westburn. And the reason they were there, along with the mills were all. I'm pointing in this direction here, which is meaningless to you folks. It's ridiculous, I know, but that's where the hills are, in that direction, and that's why the mill, the cotton mills were up there. That's why, well, at least Westburn Sugar was up there because they were using water power at one point right off the hills. And I could show you where all that is. I mean, bits of it are still left. But then, much later on, in the early 50s, they built these factories along the front of the town where they made the tins for treacle and syrup. And then they made it here as well as canned it here. And then eventually Walker and Westburn became Tate and Lyle, which is what Exile Viking is referring to. And then, of course, that eventually all went, and I believe it's down in England now, what's left of it. London, in fact. Oh, Lorraine, good evening. How are you? I hope you're doing all right. I just want our country back. Yeah. Anglo, at least we didn't chop their knackers off like the Arabs did. Yeah, and the other thing, of course, what the Arabs did is they murdered the babies, and the way they did that is they held them by the ankles and smashed them against their heads against the rocks. Kadum! Like a big egg, smash, dead. Yeah, I think we would all agree with that sentiment. And that's one of the many reasons why you don't have large populations of black people in the Middle East because they didn't allow the black slaves to multiply. And when they did multiply, they didn't keep them alive very long. Well, I know. This is the point I was making a bit earlier before you arrived, Hasdak. It's the fact that you can't slice history up like this. History is a continuous flow. And once you start slicing it up, you get a distortion. Immediately, you get a distortion. And of course, if you're doing it deliberately, then the distortion becomes, you know, pretty awful, pretty big. Scott's armour, as usual, making a great point. Usury is still slavery, says he. And how accurate is that, folks? It's just accepted by the governments of the world. And I'll add a little ode to that. And it's only becoming acceptable recently. And when you talk in history, and you say recently, a couple of 100 years, less than that. One of the many reasons why Germany in the 30s had to be destroyed, because it wasn't allowed in Germany when the Hitler government came to power. And hadn't been allowed in Europe for hundreds of years. And that was enforced by the Roman Catholic Church. And any time it got started, this is the other thing about that group of people. They always complain about getting thrown out of other countries, but they never mention why they get thrown out. And when you discover why they got thrown out of so many countries, you discover it's the same reason over and over again. Now, what does that tell you? Well, to me, that tells you that this is a people who don't learn a lesson. They start up usury, it gets a whole grip of poor people and rich people. It gets to such an extent it becomes intolerable. And the people in charge of that country have to do something about it. And ultimately, what they do is they toss them all out, throw them out of the country. Then what happens is they go to another country and they do the same thing all over again. They never learn. And they blame that on us. There's a familiar pattern here, don't you think, folks? Kind of sounds like the the slave mentality again, this victimhood mentality. But Scott's armour is correct, of course. But for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, the Roman Catholic Church stood firm on not allowing that usury to be acceptable. If there's anything positive you can say about Muslims, it's that. Their banking system does not operate in that way. They don't have that usury system. It should be outlawed, of course. Doberman is saying usury is bumpable in Scotland. I bumped thousands. Nothing appeared. Nothing happened. Don't even pay council tax. 12 years now and nothing. That's just a noise. It's not real. I'm staggered. How do you get away with? There's got to be some consequences, surely. You haven't paid council tax for 12 years. Now, I understand it. If there's a debt there and you're just ignoring it, it's just going to grow. So what? I get that part of it. But normally they don't let it go. Normally, they'll come and no, they can't do that. That's stopped now. I was going to say they come and warrant sales and what have you, but that's all been stopped. Oh, you're leaving us, are you? Repro. Okay. We'll see you later. Anglo tax being cattle at this point. I think you're far wrong. I think you're far wrong. That would be good if the masses would see it. That's Dick. I think we'd all agree with that. That would be a good thing. A free booter. Well, I'm sure if I've got this wrong, I'll be corrected. But I'm pretty certain it says in the Bible. Now, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament or it's both, I'm not quite sure. But I'm sure it says that the practice about debt in it must be the Old Testament. The standard practice was in these societies that after 7 years, the debt, all debt was cancelled, and you started from a clean sheet again. I see no Caesar. Good boy. Anglo. The House of Commons, dear billionaires. Sunak. What's common about that? Well, nothing, of course, Anglo. And as I've said all my life, this whole parliament business was built on corruption. It started out of a corrupt world. How else could it be anything but corrupt? And it's had hundreds and hundreds of years to to bring that corruption into a perfection all of its own. I'm quite confident there are people who go there who are not essentially corrupt people, but are corrupted by the system because it's had hundreds of years to perfect how it does it. To me, it's a bad system. Well, I think I think that's a very good point, and I think everybody here will be very similar to that. No one in my family ever owned any slaves. Likewise with mine, they either worked down the pits or in the mills, enjoying their white privilege. Well, actually, nobody in my family ever worked down the pits, as far as I know. Well, as far as I did my genealogy. Uh, but they certainly worked in the mills. The women, my granny and all that, they worked in the mills. I worked in the mills myself. I believe it's something like 109 Anglo, 109 countries. That's right, Toffee. He's correct, of course. They were the only group that was allowed to loan money. In the medieval times, that is. Yeah, yeah 109. 109. Well, they've been thrown out of this country before, but they were allowed back in. I think Henry VIII, or was it his daughter, what allowed them back in. Oh, was it? They are. Toffee. Cromwell let them back in. Exiled. John, if you're going to play music later, can I request the song which includes the line "Raw tobacco from Jamaica and built all the great ships"? Oh yeah, of course I can play that. That song's called "A Lost Time." Yeah, thank you, Uncle. Hey, Scots. Yeah, I'll play it. Sure, I will. I could do that now, I suppose. Where do we go? Let's see. This is a song that I wrote as a celebration to the town's past. My old pal Jerry said when he heard it for the first time, he said, he said, that's an instant, that's an instant folk song. He says. So here's a song. You'll hear all this about the past and things that we're talking about. It's well remembered, exiled. So lost time it's called. You'll see the past.
There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Sugar cane from Jamaica put up sweet to them every mouth, and the cotton that once was spun here fine was gathered by winds of the south. Factory girls, topped with scarves, made the sugar, spun the bread, and the top men who made the great ships great were proud to call themselves bread. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Raw tobacco from Virginia wandered next to ruby wine, moved by dirty puffing steam trains to factories on the line. Good roads from Port Glasgow, Cooper barrels for the whiskey trade. All the world knew that the legend claimed the best ships were always quite made. There once was a time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear.
There you go, folks. Last time. Instant hit. Jerry said. Instant folk song. So there you go. Always seemed a bit odd to me. We had the Guruk rope work uh, was actually based in Port Glasgow. It is now the actual factory, the place that the ropes were actually made, and I worked there. You would say, does this bugger work everywhere? Yeah, he did actually. Um, it's been turned into luxury flats with great views over the Clyde. You like that, Carol? That's nice. Glad you like it. So, yeah, that's what it is now. It's luxury flats. Never been in them. When I was in it, we made ropes. You see, to explain and simplify all this, uh, the reason that I worked in so many places is that I never lasted very long in any of them. Yeah, I worked the docks as well. Uh, you see, I didn't care really in those days about what I was working at. I just didn't really care because I was going to be a pop star. I didn't need to worry about jobs. This was just a temporary thing, these jobs. So I would go into a place and work for a while, and if I get fed up with it, I would just leave because I was going to be rich and famous someday. So I didn't need to worry about these things. Time I got to 21, I realised that that wasn't going to happen. Ah, and so I had to change my attitude eventually. But that's just the bare truth of the matter. And in those days, of course, gosh, Hasdak has given us a list here. I've been a carpet fitter, dry cleaner, bicycle technician, site labourer, factory labourer, and automotive welder. I just get bored, either get sacked or I go to a new job. Sounds just like the way I was. Sounds just like the way I was. Didn't do some of the things you've done, of course, but in those days, of course, with the the town and the country was industrialized, there was plenty of work, and we were coming out of, you know, the calamity of the Second World War. There was plenty of work, and it was easy to get a job. All you had to go to the factory and chap on the door and ask to see or speak to the foreman, uh, and you go and speak to him and just ask the man if any job's going, mate, and he would say yes or no. It was that simple. If it was yes, you would ask when could you get started, and they would tell you. Normally, it would be the following day. So you went back the following day and with your cars and your P45, and that was you. You had the job. There's none of this nonsense that you get now. Toffee. That's what I was like when I was a youngster. Convinced I was going to end up being a professional boxer. Wow, but wasn't quite good enough. Oof. Well, I think you were wise not to try and follow that through. My God, your head belted in. It's a tough way to make a shilling, that is. Well, as Anglo said, you'll know how to take care of yourself in a brawl. That's the ideal if you can do that. That's why I work for myself, says Doberman. Hate normies. Taking to them and stuff. Oops. I've done no PAY work for 9 years. I've done some cash in hand though. Did I ever do any cash in hand? I don't think I ever did any cash in hand. I don't think that's something I've ever done. I did boxing for a few months, says Hasdick. But couldn't control my little temper. There's nothing to be ashamed there, Toffee. 12 fights in the ABAs, 9 wins. That's all right. So not bad, I suppose. Yeah, that's excellent. Good for you. I'm cash in hand. I have no bank account. Good for you. So you had 12 fights, Toffee, and you had 9 wins. I bumped it. Does that mean you had 3 losses, or did you have a couple of draws, or what? Got hit in the nose a few times, didn't like it. Well, I was the same. I had one shot at it. I joined a club and I was enjoying myself, doing the training, skipping and hitting the bag and all that stuff. And then they got me into the ring for a wee dash around, and didn't like that. I get hit too many times. No, this is going to ruin my good looks. Oh, right. Well, at least you're honest, Toffee. Got absolutely battered in the other 3 fights. Completely outclassed. Yeah, as I say, at least you're honest about it. And you will be able to take care of yourself so long as you don't get outnumbered. Anglo, I've been a butcher most of my adult life. Done some labouring on building sites. Great job, paid well for having on all day workout. I've worked in building sites myself, to be honest. You wouldn't think it, of course, That build, not exactly Superman build, but I can't say I enjoyed it. That would be a lie to say that. No. I found very quickly by the time I got into my 20s, I really wasn't suited to labouring. DJs. Well, you see, that's what happened. Done a lot of labouring over the years. It's shit. He's right. DJ is absolutely right. It's crap. It's nothing to recommend it. It took me a long, long time. Angler said I loved it. Well, each to their own, my friend. That's all I can say. Oh, it's hard graft, that's for sure. No doubt about it. You don't get your money for nothing. Well, that's what I've always said, you see, Dorothy. I never ever had to worry about my weight or my diet or anything like that because in all those years of labouring, I didn't need anything else. That was my exercise, my jobs. Well, I was labouring. I had a job labouring to plasterers who were on bonus. Three plasterers, and I was the only labourer, and they were on bonus. Could keep up. Absolutely no chance. No chance whatsoever. Didn't last long at that at all. Too hard. Anglo was saying, our people were once famous for our work ethic. Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. In fact, that song, the film for that song we were listening to, I've got the full film. You see the amount of people, men and women, I might add, who are working on the dock. It's quite amazing. And working very hard, both the women and the men, not just the men. Quite amazing. So I reckon, and I'm not just saying this, I do genuinely believe this, that my employment record my employment record uh, has stood me in good stead here, considering the fact that with the cancer and all that work, exercise, fresh air outside when I was outside working, and I think it's helped me now because up until last year, I had the only thing I had trouble with was I had a little arthritis in my right hip. That was it. It was the only thing that bothered me up until last year. That means, oh, up until I was 76, I had no health problems. Oh, well, that's not true. I had my appendix removed when I was 66. 66. Apparently, that's a British record, according to the doctors. But you see my point. It has it has some kind of benefit. And all of those years, remember, I was a smoker and a bit of a drinker, not a heavy drinker or anything. I did drink alcohol, of course. So I reckon that it's been an advantage in terms of health. So, what can you say? Not a lot. Right, I'm going to play this again. This is not one of my music tracks. Oops. Carol says, I'm outside barefoot and watering my garden. Trees, bushes, the cardinals are singing away. That's the way to be. Charge yourself off to the earth. This was written by our good friend Durst. The title is, where is it? The Once and Future King.
In a cave at the side of a crooked hill, a bearded future king sat still to watch a spider climb. 7 times he tried. And as he watched the spider climb, only to slip down again, he felt a kindred soul and shared its lofty goal. And as he watched that spider climb, only to slip down again, he wished the spider well, 2 hermits in a cell. Then up the silken thread went he, slow and sure and carefully, until he reached his home, and balance was restored. once a future king took heed, employed the lessons he would need to win his rightful throne. When balance is restored,
I like that one. Well, I like all of his stuff, actually. I particularly like that one. I think it's a great sound, great arrangement. Yeah, that's a good tune, isn't it? Most important, it's got a good tune. I always remember when we started out in the group. Oh, I'm glad you like it, Toffee. As I say, it's not mine, it's Durst. Go to his channel if you haven't gone there. He's got lots of good stuff. I've used a few of them on here. And the best advice in music I got when I was starting out was if you can get, I mean, it doesn't really apply today, of course, but it did back then. If you can get the milkman to whistle it in the morning, you know you've got a hit. And I think that's certainly true. In other words, if you can get folk to whistle it, if it's melodic enough and simple enough, then it'll catch with people. If it's got decent lyrics to go with it, that makes it even better, of course. It was a bit like the Beatles' psychedelic era, you would think, Toffee. It reminds me a little bit. It reminds me a little bit of Ralph McTell album stuff. Wagner hated popular music, says Doberman. Good old Wagner. Perhaps German popular music wasn't that good when he was around. I don't know. No idea. Ride of the Valkyries, says Anglo. Anyway, I'm going to bring this Friday evening. Yiddish, he said. Ah, that explains it. That explains it, Doberman. He didn't care much for that group of people, did old Wagner. Robert is saying it's Roy Harperish. Don't know the person, Robert, to say or agree with you. I just rather like it. He's got a very good technical way of recording the various instruments he uses. Yeah, look what they do with rappers. Wagner knew, says Doberman. The most of them are lovely, says Bass. Yeah, it does, Anglo. It's just I was up awfully early today and I was out. And I don't get out very often these days because of the breathing difficulties here. But I had to go out today. Anyway, unless there's any requests for anything, I'll I'll bring this to a close. So I haven't forgotten about the booklet. Well, let me bring on the music then. It's not that I've run out of stuff to say, it's just, to be honest, I'm tired. And that's another thing I don't like. I find these days are easily tired. That's why I don't make 42s stream. It's too late now for me. Oh, thanks very much, DJ. That would be nice, yeah. If we could get a good day, weather-wise, we could we could spend it out the back, have a bite to eat and a drink out the back. That would be real nice. I look forward to that. That would be really great. Yeah, and look forward to having her on the live stream. But that's just wrong. I'm just a bit tired because I was out today walking and I'm easily tired. I don't like it. I'm not used to it. When I think of what I was able to do once, it's outrageous. There's no business like business. Well, look, folks, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you all coming here, as you do. But yeah, I'm still working on the booklet or the, the party policy document is going to be turned into a booklet. I've got I've got a rough price for it and we can afford it. So I'm going to, over the weekend, I hope to start doing the design work for it. And that would be really great, DJ, if you and your good lady came down. We could have a nice day outside if the weather was good. I appreciate the problem with money. You can't really do much without it. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. I will be keeping myself busy, don't worry. And I'll be here next week again. A bit of good grace from the great creator. I shall be here. And I look forward to speaking to you all again next week. And if you get a bit of weather over the weekend, get yourself outside and away from the computer screen. Okay? So, for this evening, I will say, as I always like to say, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until Tuesday, 9 o'clock, bye for now. Take care, and thanks again for being here. I appreciate that. Enjoy the music.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides the fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves.
Sometimes it's like that. Yeah.
But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow.
Well, the thing is, I never thought on
An
that.
eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now.
But love's much more
So much more
than we can know.
than we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow,
But an important
an
glow.
eternal flow. Melodies of long ago,
Good evening, 77.
songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, paths of consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony. But we're much more
So much
than we can know.
that we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow,
But a very important glow.
in the eternal flow. But life's much more
So much
and we can know we are one small glow in eternal flow.
Take care, everyone. And thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. And we'll speak again soon. Take care. Yeah, don't forget 42's on tomorrow night. So is Said some. So take care.